One thing you need to know about the AO is it is never going to be finished. Never. We now have full control of the software and the hardware, which is something we never had before. So as feedback comes to us from you in the field, that stuff that we can implement, we're going to do our level best to do. Some of it isn't practical, at least not at this point in time with the technology and the software that we have. But we're working to make this as beneficial to you as possible. Okay, that being said, before we get back into the scan, let me explain a couple things about testing. I don't care who does the testing. The average results of a blood test, urine test, a stool test through a lab is 60 to 65% accurate. That's published by that industry, not by us. The reason there's such a low percentage of accuracy is several things come into play. Machines, the machine's calibration, the technicians, the reagents that are being used. Have the reagents been properly stored and cared for? Have they been handled properly? And so that's why there's such, it's only 60-65% of that is accurate. If you want to validate that for yourself, and I would recommend that you do, next time you go in to a doctor and have a blood and urine drawn for a test, ask them to draw it for 3 and have them send it to 3 separate labs and compare them. Then you won't feel so bad when you pull up a vital scan and it doesn't match some of the stuff that your clients are telling you. These tests are only as accurate as the technician, the machine, and the reagents will allow it to be. And I'm not saying they're not important, because they are important. But we need to look at it for what it is and understand that. Having said that, our machine has those same types of restrictions. Now, we don't deal with reagents, so we don't have to worry about a reagent, making sure it was refrigerated or cared for properly. The machine is already calibrated, and it's not something that you can go in and uncalibrate because it's burned into the processors and into the software. The only thing that changes is how well we're receiving the information from the client. For example, if I take your blood sample but put Deanna's name on it, send it to a lab, it isn't accurate for Deanna. You understand? Or like somebody that comes into your office and gives you fake date, weight, height, name, the test isn't going to be considered to be accurate. When you're dealing with subtle energies, you need to make sure that you and your client are both in the best state of mind to do this. It's that important. The other thing that we found, Alan and I found by working with a couple doctors here in Orem, was that their technicians were working on people all day long, 5 days a week. Well, after a couple of weeks, these technicians started having brain fog and weren't at their level best, and we were wondering what could it be. We found out that by adding 2 things, only turning on the Cepheid when you're actually doing the frequency optimizations, and making sure their feet are on grounding mats. Grounding mats, you can buy them on Amazon. They're like 2 for $60. Just put in grounding mat on Amazon. In fact, we have a couple here that we can show you later so you can see. Plugs into the wall, and you just put your feet on it. If you don't have a grounding mat, take your shoes off and let your feet sit on the floor. That's at least better than nothing. Why do we want you to do that? One, we don't want your energy to be influencing this system, and we don't want their energies influencing you. You need to be grounded in a good space, okay? Having said that, you will still find in our reports false negatives and false positives. We're not immune to that. Think about it this way. In your body, you have a symphony of chaos of frequencies going on all the time. Millions of them. We've only cataloged, I shouldn't even say we, the Russians only cataloged about 120,000 of those. So when we're scanning you, and the scan is going through and it's picking up all these frequencies, it may pick up frequencies that we don't have cataloged. And so the way the software is written, it will look for the frequency closest to that and plug it in. There's your false positive or a false negative. Now, the way we look at that, and we're going to go through that in a minute when we do a scan, it's looking for the frequency closest to what it is. And if you don't have it, it will try to find it. Now, we have two options to that. We can dumb down the machine to where we don't have hardly any of those. And so you'll have very little false positives or false negatives. But you will lose so much resolution of what you're looking for. And even though something may come up as a false positive, when you learn how to read your report, you're going to be able to find and say, whoa, maybe this is linked to this. One of the things we found out when you get a lot of allergy, and people say, I eat almonds all the time, I don't have any issues, I don't have any problem with willow tree, I don't have any problems with these allergies. It's not necessarily that it's a false positive. We found out that it's directly correlated to parasites. You go down that report, and I'm willing to bet you that you'll find a whole bunch of parasites that have come up with a positive. Get rid of the parasites and the allergy sensitivities disappear. See, this is what we want to teach you, and we're learning this, just so you know, from the practitioners who are in the field doing this all the time. They're calling in and saying, you know what, I found a correlation between this and this. Linda Gregerson is the one that gave us that correlation between allergy sensitivities and parasite infestation. See, so the more of this that you learn, if you'll shoot that, Alan has set up an email called info@energydevelopment, right? info@energydevelopment.com. Send us those things to that particular email. Those will get checked. We can run those by our engineers, and we can learn how we can do better at this. Does that make sense? Your input is really, really important to us as we continue to fine-tune and develop this software. There's other correlations. Prostate issues, you'll always find a zinc issue, generally a deficiency in zinc. So as you start to learn how to read your report in its entirety, you'll start to understand something that appears to be a false positive or a false negative, and you'll be able to explain that. Now, one of the last things you ever want to hear your surgeon when you're under the knife for surgery is him say, oops, okay? The last thing your client ever wants to hear from you is, oh my word, this is horrible. All right? You just immediately shot their stress levels through the ceiling. Even if they think you're a voodoo doctor, I'm telling you, what we say and the way we say it is very, very important. So learning how to look at that report, and if it looks like, wow, this is really bad, you're going to have to be able to act like you're playing poker and you're winning and you got a winning hand. You got to keep that to yourself until it's appropriate to talk. So you're going down that list and you see these things are coming up 9s or 1s, and you're wanting to say, oh my word, you've got this issue and you got this issue. Wait until you get all the way to the bottom of that report and you're looking at everything in that report, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see those correlations and you'll start to say, okay, this can happen when this is low or high. And so we really don't have an issue with the heart, we really have an issue with the stomach. It's not digesting properly, it's causing issues that mimic a heart issue, but it's actually a digestion issue. In fact, the Chinese refer to the stomach as the second heart. So it's important, like I said in the earlier session about the one brick in the wall. It's one brick. Pull that brick out, nothing's going to happen. So just you look at your whole report, and then you start to put the pieces and connect the dots, and it'll make sense to you. All right. Should we go ahead and do a scan? Who are we going to use as a volunteer? We got a whole bunch. So there we go. Okay. Now, do you have a microphone, Alan?
I do. She volunteered. Let me put in the information that I know, and then you fill in the blanks, okay?
Alan, why don't we swap, and then I can hold that. Okay, so watch again. I know it seems almost elementary to see this, but this is so critical that we do it correctly every single time.
So, add client. Wild guess here. Okay. What's your birth date?
6/1/48.
Is it? Yeah, Outlook. Is it .net or .com?
Is that the spelling correct on the name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that look right? Okay. Now, is there a difference between doing it this way and doing it?
It's best if we don't put in the parentheses.
Okay.
898. 2149.
Okay.
It's a good question. I was going to address that as soon as you got finished. I'll address it
Okay.
now. Going. Okay. We don't want any spaces up here. Now, we've corrected that issue in the software. It will look for a space and then fix it. But let's say you actually hit the space button twice, it will move that whole field. So just make sure that you're always all the way to the left. So go up to the email
Okay.
and go back one. See, and that takes that space out. So, yep.
Okay.
Same with Vancouver. It's really important that you keep those up. Now, like I said,
So
we
when I
did
click in
fix
here, I
it.
need to.
If we,
Okay.
if we miss one space, the software will compensate. If you miss two spaces, it throws everything out. Okay.
How many inches? And by the way, I've seen some of you sometimes put in all caps. If you put in all caps, when you get to print out your report, the different fields are going to cross over each other. Good size, so best to use upper and lower case.
120.
Brown? Okay.
Okay. So we filled out everything just the way we're supposed to. Don't put parentheses on the number.
I can, although it
It would
won't
know
fit
it.
on the report.
Unless there, if there was a decimal point in there, it would know as metric. But it's probably better for your records to put in either pound, the pound or the M. Hair color is when you're growing up. Okay, so once that's done, we've done it, and we've made sure it's all correct, then we hit save. She will automatically be highlighted. Now, in the next version coming out, the very next one coming out, this page here will only be seen if the practitioner enters in a code, the code that he established or she established. So that none of this will be visible to your clients anymore, okay? Select technician, we need to add. And when you add it, it will automatically highlight the last person you put in, and it'll keep them in alphabetical order, top to bottom. Okay, we'll run a vitals. Just so you know, this is not one of the newer
Cradles. Let's see.
headsets.
Okay.
We had 500 new cradles made, and they're coming over on a container. They left on the 10th of August. They were supposed to be here on the 2nd of September. But in the last, or the 2 weeks right after the 8th of August, 3 typhoons hit Hong Kong, Guangzhou, southern China. and our container never left until just 3 weeks ago, and so it's due here next week. So the new cradles, those of you who have the older systems, you'll be getting a new cradle sent to you and you'll send your other one back. And we fix that issue where the communication comes up. Okay. All right. Now this is important. We've said this previously. When you run a vitals report, you don't even go through this report. You immediately go out, hit frequency optimization, and let it do it again. We do that. The first time you run a scan on the individual, they may not be completely relaxed, they may not be completely in tune, or whatever. We want to do an optimization right after the first scan, and we look at the second one. Now, I want to talk about optimization. We'll do it in a minute, but see, she was only given 30 seconds. Now, when the report comes up, that first scan gets moved over to the far right side under previous scan. That's the first one. This is the first way to catch false positives or false negatives, because if it was a false positive, that is a false positive up on the top. See, it's a 9 or an 8 and a plus. But when we ran the second one, it wasn't. But this allergy is still there. So an allergic to ryegrass pollen, not ryegrass, but the pollen of ryegrass. Now that would be an indication of one of two things. One, it could be a false positive. Two, more likely, we've got a parasite issue. Or the obvious is you do have the allergic reaction. And so how are we going to do that? We're going to scroll all the way down and look at the whole report before we assess, is that a real issue? Okay? So the first scan on vitals is the throwaway. The second one is the one you work from.
False positive, false positive, false positive, false positive.
You see how that cleans that up? It just kind of goes through and it says, "Oh yeah, that wasn't it." It's out of the way. It's out of the way.
Also, on the positive negative, we're not using this scale where 5 is optimum. This is becoming an ascending scale from 1 to 9, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So
Okay, miasm's a good quote. We'll come to
a
that.
2 for gluten would be a very low sensitivity to gluten. Not like a celiac type situation, but a low sensitivity. And a 9 would be a high. We use this scale when we're looking at the items like amino acids and basic physical. Pluses and minuses, a 1 is low, ascending up 2, 3, 4, up into the point where we get 8, 9 is the high part when we're using the positive and the negative. Everybody understand that? Okay. All right.
Now, while we're going doing this, let me just make an observation here. We're in a big room here, a lot of people. This is not an ideal situation to do a scan on an individual. So I wouldn't go on this report anyway. This is just for us to go through and kind of get a feel how to do it. Conditions in the room are really important. You don't have to turn off your lights or any of that, but for us, we like a nice lazy chair, a lazy boy chair, and a comfortable chair for the client to sit in. We'll make sure that they have either a glass or a bottle of purified water that they can sip. You always want to make sure and remind your clients when they come in to make sure they're well hydrated. That does not include coffee, tea, and Pepsi or Coke. Water, water, water is the hydration. So have them drink a glass of water. Give them a glass of water because water is what helps us conduct those frequencies in our body. So making sure they're well hydrated. Okay, so as you go down, let's... Okay. Question was brought up a little earlier about my blood test said I have anemia. I don't have enough red blood cells. And here this says it's positive. Now, if this was that individual, it's not. But if it was,
and he knew that, or she knew that, I'd want to know that too. So before I go into the explanation, that brings up another point. Sit down with your client. Are you missing any organs? Have you had a hysterectomy? Do you still have your appendix? We're not psychics. We don't read their mind. And if we're truly going to educate somebody, then we need to know as much about them as possible. Have a questionnaire that you have them fill out so that you know. In energy medicine or energy work, whether you've had an organ taken out physically or not, the energetic signature of that organ is still there. Proof, scientific proof, phantom pain. Somebody's been to war, lost his arm, but every morning his fingers and wrists are hurting. He doesn't have a finger and a wrist physically anymore. The Russians did some scalar photography where they can actually show, they'll take a leaf, and that's one of the ones you can pull up on the internet and see. There'll be a picture of a leaf that's have been torn off, and there's an energetic picture of the leaf. And where the leaf is, you see a real strong definition line around the leaf, but hardly anything. But the faint image of the rest of the leaf is there, meaning that the energetic signal of that leaf is there. Same with when we remove an organ from the body. The energetic signal is there, even though the organ isn't. People will say, oh, see, I don't have a gallbladder, and you're saying my gallbladder's fine. What that means is your body's compensating. If it was a 5, it means your body's dealing with its absence with no problem. It's dealing with it. And if it's a 2 or a 1 or a 9, it would tell you how well the body's dealing in its absence. Again, so you have to look at this, but if you're going in with only part of the information, they haven't told you this, then you're being set up to be tricked, and that's not what we're in the business to do. And if someone starts to play that game with you, end your session and send them home. Does that make sense? Okay, so back to here. In this case, the red blood cells, according to his lab test, say that he's anemic, okay? So you want to go in and say, well, why would his blood test say he's anemic and the vital scan says it's perfectly normal? Here's what I would recommend. Look at the whole thing. There might be something else. It might be not that he's anemic. He's anemic is a symptom of another issue. So we want to find out what else is going on in the body that would be causing his red blood cells to be low before we just say, well, this is a false positive or a false negative, which it could very well be. Or it's a symptom of something we need to find. That's why your red blood cells aren't bad. They just don't have enough of them. And what would be causing that? See, there's a lot of information in this report that you can't just look at it at face value and say, oh, you have this or that, or you don't have this or that. And I know this is making it sound confusing. It really isn't. If you just have to look, and if he was to say, well, my lab report says I'm anemic, but this says, then we're saying, okay, we're going to look more. We're going to look more into your system and find out where we are. Some people will accept that, some people won't, and that's okay. Okay, go ahead, Alan. All right, let's just stop here for a second. Let's say that this particular category here had a bunch of issues that you want them to deal with. Their diet, maybe. Their omega-3s and fatty acids are out of whack. Here's where you'd use the Snagit program or the Light Shot program, where you'd open that up and you'd highlight that and save it. And then when you're all done with your thing, you can bring up all those things that you just highlighted and just copy and paste them onto a Word doc and send it out. So here's all the stuff. Instead of sending them home with the report saying, go read this through, here you can actually make notes and stuff. So that's why the Snagit programs and the Light Shot programs are really helpful. Okay? Go ahead. Okay. A lot of information on this chart. Is there any specific questions about this report? And let me bring this mic back to you. Oh, Okay, go ahead.
My question pertains to the minerals and vitamins. The readings, if I have a 2, say a low reading on a particular good mineral for myself, not the heavy minerals, does that mean it needs to be increased? Does it, is that what's showing up in my body?
Okay.
My question is reading the minerals and the vitamins.
Okay, that's a really good question. So for those that maybe didn't hear that, because I don't know if that mic's on, but what does it mean when you see a mineral or a vitamin that has either low or high? Does it mean that they're deficient or too much? Okay, that's a tricky one. And to be honest with you, the way the software reads it, it just sees it as an imbalance. The way that we think that it's being interpreted is when it's high, it's one of two things. You're so low that it's become critical that you don't have it, or you have too much. The way you'd ask that question is, okay, are you taking a XYZ supplement for this, or are you eating this kind of a diet? You drink a lot of soda. Soda depletes our body, especially a lot of mineral. So if they say, no, and I'm taking a really good, in this case, maybe it's Nordic Naturals. They're taking Nordic Naturals omega-3s, which is a good one. And most people assimilate Nordic Naturals really well. So then we would say, okay, well then if it was a 9, then we would say, okay, your body's not assimilating this product. And so I would suggest changing brands and see, we'll test it again in a week and see if it's still high or if it's starting to come down. Just because Robin can assimilate a particular supplement doesn't necessarily mean that Dr. Labram will. We're all different. The way we eat, the way we process stress, the way we think is going to affect how well we assimilate and digest our foods and our supplements. So it's important when you see those numbers. So back to your question directly. If it's low, back to the same questions. Are you taking a supplement? And let's say that they're low, but they're taking a lot of supplements and the number's high. That generally means that the body is now storing that vitamin or that mineral in its fatty tissue because it says, I need this mineral or I need this vitamin. But it can't break it down, but it's holding on to it because it needs it. As soon as the right supplement or vitamin that can be assimilated by the individual is taken and it starts assimilating it, the body will start to release the unhealthy ones that are being built up in the tissue. So again, this is not a simple, like you get a blood test that says your liver enzymes are elevated, your kidney enzyme, or your kidney bun is out of whack. This isn't that simple. The vitals test, as simple as it is to take, it's a very complicated report. So you've got to take it with you've got to go through there and look at each item and see how and where the correlations are. Talk about their diet. Talk about their lifestyle. Are they under a lot of stress? All of these things will help you understand the report. That's probably confusing for some, but if you pay attention to it, you'll start to see those patterns and those correlations. I know, Deanna, you do. I know, Jennifer, you do. I know, Juanita, that you do, as you played with this. But these people have been working with this technology for years. You will start to see those things. As you start doing it, you'll start to see those patterns. Again, the best practitioner is one who asks questions. Ask the questions. Get as much information from your client as you can, and as much as they're willing to share with you. Then look at the report, look at all of those things combined. Are there any questions on that? And if you're online, you want to ask a question, text it, and they'll give us the question. Okay, real quick, just microphone.
So on the macro and the micro minerals, can you address that? Because some of the minerals are the same in both categories.
I cannot. And it's not because I don't want to. It's because I don't know enough about the minerals. So people who understand the minerals, and that could probably answer that much better than I can. Do we have somebody in the room that does understand the body minerals and correlations? You do?
I know what she's talking about. So if you look at
Microphone.
you look up there, you're going to have like 10 up on the top and then 10 on the one that has
The micro.
The macro. If you have enough, That's where you look for the top part. It's the part the body uses. If on the bottom part it also says like a 2 or a 9, that means you had enough and now you have too much. Some of them are in both places, on the heavy metals and above it. So you look at the above for your body, but look at the other one, and if it says more, then you have too much.
Okay.
So we need some chromium, but you can have too much. You need some iron, but you can have too much.
Okay. Does that help? Was that helpful for everybody? Dr. Labor.
I would just like to make a comment in relation to the last one from Juanita. The way we get different minerals in our body is different too. We all know of these toxic chemical exposures in air pollution and industrial exposure and various different things like that we all know about, that maybe some of the very same minerals our body needs that we would take otherwise in an organic fashion in your diet, which the body processes fine and uses. So even though it says zinc or something else like that, depending on how it came to the individual could determine if it's healthy or if it's toxic.
Okay, that's a good point. All right, so as you can see on this test, you have a wealth of information here. 85% of it or more is going to be dead on, at least according to what we've seen in our testing so far. But 15% of it is up for more research, for more development. So look at your report, look at it its whole, and look at your client. And learn as much as you can. Alan, can you go to AO Scan real quick? You have a resource called aovitals.com.
Okay. Let's see, where is it?
It's under.
Yeah, let me just.
So if you go to aovitals.com and you select your language, in this case would be English, and just for fun, let's go down to one of the mineral pages. All of the information that we could glean on these different minerals is right here for you. So this is a resource that you can use. It also takes it puts you one step away from diagnosing, because you're taking them to a website that explains this information. Again, like I explained in the first session this morning, we are educators. We are not doctors diagnosing, treating, and curing. So use your resources. This webpage is up there for you, and we will continue to add and again, it's all public information. None of this is diagnosing anything. Okay? Okay, thanks, Alan. You can go back. Okay. Before I leave the vital scan, is there any other questions pertinent to the vital scan that we might want to address right now?
How often should you be doing it on a client?
Okay, good question. How often do you do a scan? On the older system, we could only scan every other day. On this system, you can scan every day, every single day. And the reason for that is the way we do frequency optimization versus the old metatherapy. Let's step back again. Once a day, and let's say that you have a clinic where you have multiple modalities. You might have a chiropractic adjustment. You might have a post-electromagnetic field mat. You might have a hyperbaric chamber. You might have a lot of different modalities. And you want to find out if that modality is going to help somebody. So you can do a vital scan, then go have them do whatever the modality is, or take the supplement that you want them to test, wait 1 hour, and redo the vitals test. And it will show you if it had a positive effect, a negative effect, or a neutral effect. It'll only allow you to do that one time in a 24-hour period of time. Does that make sense? You would only use that when you're trying to validate a protocol. Otherwise, once a day. Now, it'll let you scan and scan and scan, and nothing will change. You'll just burn up a whole lot of time. So after you've done, if you do a second one, That's all you'll be able to do in that day that's actually reading a scan. All right, let me talk about frequency optimization. In the old system, it was called metatherapy. You'd scan them, then you'd click on a button, and it would go through and it would do a therapy on all the frequencies. And the way their frequency worked was all of your negative frequencies, all your frequencies that were out of range, they would play all those frequencies back into the brain, but 180 degrees out of phase. With the idea of noise-canceling headphones. You take the noise outside, you play that noise inside the ear cup, but 180 degrees out of phase. When the two hit, they cancel. Thus, they call them noise-canceling headphones. And you'll hear, when you turn on the little switch, about a second later, you'll hear everything just kind of go silent. The problem with that, it's highly effective, but the problem with it is we, our human nature says, oh my word, we got a little bit better, let's do it again. Oh, it got a little better, I'll do it again. And they just keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going, and pretty soon the body is stressed. The body's had enough. And now you're starting to make a condition worse, just kind of like you're taking too much medication. 2 ibuprofens is good, so maybe 4 is better. See, it's the same type of concept. Different way of getting to the body, but the concept is still the same. What we did in the new system is when we take our first readings from our client, the first thing it does is analyze the client. And what did I tell you? It takes 3 times for the system to really learn an individual. Once it's done that and you go do a frequency optimization, before it does the optimization, it says, okay, with this condition, with this individual, with her current or his current physical, mental, emotional, spiritual state, they can have these frequencies for this long. And it combines it, puts it together, and sends it out. Takes all that guesswork out, and it takes out the possibility of people going in and doing too much. We work on the tuning fork principle. We encourage the unhealthy frequencies to move towards balance instead of forcing them through a cancellation, like on the old system. I'll repeat that again. We work on encouraging, not forcing. We don't do the noise canceling, the frequency canceling. We do the frequency encouragement by putting in the frequencies that will encourage the frequencies that are out of balance to move towards balance. See, it's just like everything in life is balance, isn't it? That's why our scale is 1 to 9, with 5 being perfect. 5's your balance. Now, the other question that came up is, I do a scan, I do an optimization, but my numbers didn't get better, they got worse. Okay, let's go back to what we're all familiar with. Commercials on TV about supplements or about medicines. Well, if you take this, it's going to help your blood do this, but it might cause your liver to do this and this and this and this and this. There's side effects. If I had any one of you get down and do 25 sit-ups right now, your stomach would be sore, your back would be sore. Did I just put a stress on a bunch of muscles in your abdomen that were perfectly not stressed just a minute ago? Of course I did. So what's that going to do on the report? It's going to show, hey, this got worse when this got better. Well, that's a temporary, because there's a stressor. You remember, we're measuring frequencies. We're measuring balance and energy. Give you another example. If I give you 300 milligrams of niacin, you drink it down, you're going to flush, you're going to feel like you're on fire, you're going to start itching, burn, you're going to think that I'm having a heart attack because you're going to have this racing of the heart. Your liver enzymes are going to go through the ceiling. Now, if I did a scan on that, I'm going to see things out of whack. I'm going to see my heart race. I'm going to see all sorts of things. And you're going to say, oh, my word, that just made me worse. But if I wait an hour, I go back in, I find out that everything went right back to balance. And not only did it get back to balance, it got better. Niacin will cause your liver enzymes to elevate. But as soon as the flush finishes, your liver enzymes go back to normal within an hour or two. That's one of the things that the The dark side of medicine is telling you don't take that much niacin because it's going to cause your liver enzymes to go through the ceiling and you're going to damage your liver. Partly true, mostly false. 10% of a lie and 90% of truth is still a lie. It's not causing any damage to your liver. It is causing your liver to exercise and function much harder, but it immediately goes right back to normal. Same when we do a frequency optimization. You're going to cause parts of the body to resonate differently, which could cause something to feel stressed. And when it feels stressed, it means it is no longer in balance. Let it do its job, and those things will generally go right back to normal and generally become stronger. So just because it doesn't show you, that we show you that it goes bad, we didn't used to. The first versions that came out would never show you a bad number. It would only show you that it got better. We took that out because it's not true. We're just like the pharmaceutical company at that point. You're going to see exactly what it is as we can see it from what we're picking up from you. That way you can say, okay, this is going to cause you what we call in the industry a Hertzheimer reaction. We're detoxing maybe a little faster than you should because you're not properly hydrated. A Hertzheimer reaction will show up definitely worse than a balance. Is this making sense or am I going on too long? Okay. Any other questions pertaining to the vital scan? And some of that information about frequency optimization, all of that information also carries forward to comprehensive.
Can you do the AO body now after you do that scan?
Okay, AO body is not part of the scanner. It doesn't scan. That's another one of the tools. But let's show AO body a little later.
Okay.
Okay, I want to go into AO body because that's like the frosting on your cake with this scanner. And when you start to see that, you're going to get really excited. There was something I wanted to say to you about the frequency optimization. Oh, frequency optimization will go anywhere from 30 seconds to 300 seconds, 5 minutes. It will not go any longer because any longer than that can then start to cause the reverse. It's like turning the volume up in your car too loud. It feels great for a second or two, and then pretty soon it's not so great. So, and it will determine which sets of frequencies your body needs and for how long your body can tolerate it to get the maximum benefit. Right now, it doesn't show you what frequencies we're putting into the body. In the next couple versions, I don't know if it's the next one or the one after, it will actually show you which sets of frequencies that it was playing back in for your optimization, just so you have it for your records. Question, Mike?
So the frequencies that it's that's putting back into your body, is it gathering from the database
Yes.
within the system? So when you scan, say, your left arm of the nervous system, and some of the issues that have come up within the database, and you're looking at the like the emotions and the conflict matrix and all of that. So it's taking everything that shows up there and putting it into that frequency that's coming back.
Not yet. Let me explain. That's a really good question.
Okay.
Right now, it goes through, if I scan the top cut of the heart and I do a frequency optimization, it's only going to take and do play into the optimization, the frequencies pertaining to just the heart, okay? But let's say that in the course of your session, you scan the vertebrae spine, and you do the brain arteries and the brain veins, and you do the lower abdomen GI, and you didn't want to do the frequency optimization on each one. At the very end, and it's not in this version, it's one that'll be in a version, probably not even the next one, but the next one out. You could opt to do one general frequency optimization for all the scans you did in that session, which will save you some time. However, if you've got a client that's, I won't say critical, but a client that really needs all the help, I would take the extra time and I'd do the optimization after every scan. It's a little more thorough. But if you've got a patient, it's more like it's just his annual checkup and he's doing pretty good, you could go through everything and then just do one optimization at the end. And that will probably come out sometime end of October or November. So you'll have the option. Right now you don't. It'll only do frequency optimization on the last thing you scanned. Yes. No, wait. Just that item you just scanned. Incomprehensive. Now in the vitals, it'll scan for everything. But in comprehensive, it'll only do the one that you just finished scanning.
How do you compare it to last week's scan?
Can you do an optimization for me real quick? Okay, the question that you heard was, how do you compare it? Right now, we can only compare the scan you just did and a frequency optimization of that scan. It finishes here. Now do an optimization. So we just did a scan. Now we're going to do an optimization. Said here she needed 30 seconds. Again, it's not on her head, so you can see it. No, it's fine. No. It has nothing to do. It just wasn't. It's not picking up enough, so I just picked the default lowest, 30 seconds. But when this finishes, it'll give you a percentage from the scan and then immediately after one frequency optimization. What Jennifer was asking, well, how can I compare this last one compared to one we did 3 weeks ago? See down here where it says negative 22? We didn't do her any good. See the negative? Why? Because it wasn't on your head. Thank you. Okay, so when you're doing this, this should be in the next version coming out. Isn't that what we talked about last night, Alan? When you click on, say, heart top cut, it would open up all of the heart top cuts that you've scanned since you started with that client. And then you could pick which one and compare it to the last one. So that is a feature that will be available to you in the very next session. Okay? One thing we do not have yet that the old system had was the ability to take somebody's supplement, put it on the machine, and say, okay, is this supplement good for me or bad for me or neutral? We can't do that yet, but that is coming out, and that will be out sometime in October, early November. At that point, you've basically got everything that was originally in the 90 system.
Okay, so backing up to the vital scan. So is there really a need to do it every day? I don't, I'm doing it like every 6 to 8 sessions because
Okay, no,
we're
the
working
question
on
that you asked earlier was how often can you do it?
Yeah,
The question you're asking now is, do you need to? And the answer is absolutely not.
okay.
Okay? In fact, I would recommend maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks.
Okay,
Okay?
that's what I was thinking. Okay, so second question, on the amino acids, can you make any clarification or help us in our learning of understanding of how to read the amino acids?
You're going to read the amino acids the same way you read minerals and vitamins.
Okay.
It's not a clear-cut, simple, this is what it means. You really have to look at the whole thing, find out what their diet is, see how much stress it is. What is it, 10 of the 21 amino acids are essential. The other 11, 10 are made by the body, and the others have to be gotten from diet. And so there's just a lot of questions there.
Is it possible for you to change that so that the essential amino acids are in one block and the rest of them are in another block?
The answer to the question is yes. The
Thank
answer is
you.
how soon.
Put it on your list, please.
I'll put it on the list. Just so you understand, for us to make one change in vitals is about 3 days' work. And it's because of how the forms have to line up and how the data has to be superimposed on them. That is a good one. And we are making some changes. We'll add that to the list. In fact, that's a really good one.
Okay, so now I want
Separate
to
the
clarify
two.
understanding as well. So when it scans, it's just looking, it's reading, it's finding things. But when we do frequency optimization, it's both scanning and sending frequencies at the same time?
No. Good question. You're not scanning and optimizing at the same time. It does an optimization, And then from that optimization, it just tells you what changed. So it just goes down, and it doesn't scan every single item. It will go down the database, and if there was a change, it'll tell you what the change is. Does it make sense? No.
No, because I'm thinking, well, how are we getting that change? How is it reading the change? Because the scan is reading, the optimization is sending.
We're back
But
on vitals report, right?
Right, yes.
Alan,
Well,
can you
and
go
this
back-
too.
All right, well, okay. I can't do it on this, though. So go back to vitals and do I don't know if this will allow us to do
Like
what
here's a
allows us to do.
1 that went to or here's a 2 that went to a 1. Is that
Yes.
I'd have to do a new person because it won't let me do it because it hasn't been an hour. But, okay, the optimization part is only a few seconds. Now, the frequencies are going to go on for whatever that time period that was. But the body will respond. The body will respond to what's going to change within the first 12 to 18 seconds. Does that make sense?
But there is scanning then happening at that time.
There's a comparison scan. It's a little bit different, but yes.
It's different, but there is
There is
some
a
kind
scan.
of scanning
It,
going
it,
on.
it compares here, and then with this frequency optimization, these are the changes that will take place, and it just rewrites the form.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Okay, I think unless there's any other questions on vitals, we'll move on. Okay, let's go back to
I'll send it you,
comprehensive.
okay?
Okay, so let's do the vertebrae, the spine vertebrae. Yes, please. No, that's connective tissue. Right there. Skeleton vertebrae. Okay. I like this one. I like this one a lot. The left side is showing you your discs. The right side is showing you the bone. Okay, so it's real easy to see. So as the scan goes through, it now writes the information onto that form. So we got cervical disc C7, so the disc there is a 1, and if you look over at C4, we've also got a 1. Thoracic T2 vertebrae is a 9. So I don't know if you've done much with this, Dr. Labram. Our microphone person is asleep.
I appreciate the opportunity to respond to this because even though my exposure to the AO scan is quite limited at this time, I have had 35 years of experience with standard radiology on the spine. And consistently, with hardly any exceptions, when you take a person that's 60 years or older, you can almost every time find a degenerative disc at C7 and C6. You'll find stress at C1 and 2 on almost every person, even if they're younger. And a few of these vertebral scans like you have on the screen that I've done have correlated with that pretty much exactly based on person's age and so forth. I would be brave enough to say that if Eileen were a 22-year-old person, that C7 reading that you have there is a number 1, which indicates degeneration and disc thinning to me. If you were comparing that to standard radiology, I think that's what you'd find, which would be hypoactivity or decreased function. If she were a 21 or 22-year-old person, that would most likely be in closer to a normal reading.
I'm going to tell you, thank you. I'm going to tell you that I hurt my, I couldn't stand on my leg, my left knee. I couldn't stand on my leg. It just hurt and hurt and hurt. And
Are those too loud?
I had a doctor tell me that I needed to have the meniscus changed.
Better?
So I had the knee surgery done, and it didn't make any difference. I go see a doctor in Mexico, I don't know what you call it, not a chiropractor, an orthopedic doctor, or anyway, bone doctor. He said, "You don't have any problem with your knee. It's your lumbar that's the problem." I said, "No, it's not. It's my knee. My knee hurts. My back's fine." He said, "It's your lumbar." He said, "Go down and do a scan, an MRI of your lower back." And so I did, and sure enough, L3, L4, and L2, L4, and L5 were herniated. I didn't feel anything in my lower back. It was my knee, and the way this doctor explained it to me was it was pinching or some way of my nerve that went to my knee. So I felt it in my knee, but it was my back. So I come back and I scan my back, and sure enough, my knee was fine. L3, L2, L4, and L5 on the scan. Now this was on the last system, but it was all 6s, which is the worst you could get. So, or 5s and 6s. So the scan correlated completely with the MRI. And here's another one of those things where my knee was the problem. And I'm telling the doctor it's my knee, but it wasn't my knee at all. It was my lower back. So it's same with the vitals, or same with anything you're looking at. What is causing this problem here could be something entirely somewhere else in the body. Okay, so we're still optimizing. Needed help. Okay. Can't move anything until that's finished, so we're just going to let it go. No, it's fine. Any questions on this while we're waiting? On reading the comprehensives? Yes.
When can we expect an update with the categories where, like, the male lymphatics is missing and little things like that, and one of the knees has...
A little closer to your mouth. There you go.
So I'm just wondering when you're going to be updating the categories again with the things that are missing. And
Well, lymphatics is already in. Lymphatics isn't
Okay.
one that's
I
missing,
just
but there
haven't
are
got
some.
that one.
Can
Okay.
you scroll down? I think lymphatics is there, or up, like there.
The male...
Okay, there's a lot needing to go in and a lot waiting to go in. We stopped putting the categories in and the databases in until we were more secure with the structure of the software and the foundation of the software, so that we didn't have to go in and change everything again. We're very comfortable with where our foundation is now and where the software is, so now we'll start adding. Now the next one that's coming out, which is going to be in the next week or two, is addressing the two most common questions we got from the field. And that's the HIPAA thing, getting rid of all the names on there, and being able to do comparative scans. So those two are in the process and are almost finished. The next one will be the Vegeto, where you can actually check a subject or take a supplement, put it on the machine, and it'll tell you if it's going to help, hinder, or be neutral. That one's going in, and when that one goes in, there will be some more database or some more categories going in. Okay, so when we're done with this, there was a 49% improvement. Okay? All right, let's go to database, because this is the next one that we're weak in. Right now, we only have, 7 or 8 databases we can check. And there are a few items in these databases that need to be fixed. One of them is in the software, we didn't put in gender. We didn't put in the gender specific. So you'll do a database and it'll come up and they tell the guy his ovaries are in trouble. And so, or the reverse for the women. So that's being fixed on not the one coming out this next week, but the one after. It will now check for the gender to make sure that it's the same thing, the same gender. But we should have about 7 or 8 more databases put in by the end of October, and close to double the number of categories that you can scan. Okay, and if you in your work, if there's something that you particularly need to see a scan on and we're not doing that, send it to info@energydev.com so that we can look at it and see if we can add it. Some things we can and some things we cannot. Okay? Okay. So what we've got, whatever's highlighted here, which in this case is skeleton vertebrae, and we've got pathomorphology, which is disease. So you go up and you click Analyze Database, and it'll take 5 seconds. And then it will list what it finds. Okay? So it was like in the old system where you'd click Test, you could pick your topics, hit Test, same thing. The values are really more for our purposes, not so much for you. Nidus, okay, is it a cause, it is a symptom, or is it not even real? And in the two that are blank, generally means that it's close to something, and it's a frequency that was close, but it's not. This isn't the issue, otherwise there would be a number. And then it tells you how long it's been there. Now, if it's in blue, blue means it's in the future. So if you don't make some changes, whether it's diet, lifestyle, supplementation, whatever, you're headed towards this. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it, but you become susceptible to getting that. If it's in red, now here, this has something to do with the liver, and it's, according to this, has been 5 years. Now, in this case, I would say to you that you need to, take this to your doctor and see how this lines up. Be interesting to see, and of course, the scan. Again, this isn't an accurate scan in this environment, but that's how that works. So the next one, you can click on organ, analyze, and it'll do the same thing on the organ. In one of the updates coming up, probably November, December timeframe, you'll be able to click on each one of those and then hit analyze and do it all in one pass instead of having to do each one individually. I like doing it individually for my own purposes, but in a lot of circumstances, you can do just fine with one overall database analyzation. Okay, so again, no causes there, so this would be nothing. I'd immediately go down to emotional. So anyway, does that make sense? Does this make sense to everybody? So this just kind of helps point you in the direction. How far do you want to dig down? Which way do you want to dig? Is it an emotional issue that's causing the physical anomaly? And a lot of times it is. And sometimes it's a physical thing causing the emotional. So you're going to learn to see this as you look at your reports. The more scans you do, you'll start to see those correlations. Okay, so we can go back. Okay, is there anything else on comprehensive that you feel that we need to address right now?
I'd like to discuss the database perhaps just a little bit more, or are we going to do that at another time?
Go back to the database?
To the database.
Okay.
So, a couple of questions. Number one, normally when I do a client, they're going to have 2 to 3 things that are going to show up. Occasionally, I'll have someone that has 5, 6, 7, and 8, and it's pretty consistent. What can I understand by that?
Well, that's a question that's impossible to answer in this setting. I would need to see exactly what you're talking about. What 7 are coming up? Is it 7? Is it the same 7 in every item? That doesn't.
No, it's just that every category, well, pathomorphology would have 7 or 8, organ condition 6 or 7, bacterial 7 or 8, parasite 7 or 8, and this is consistent
with this one individual.
Yeah, this one individual. I've had about 5 individuals that this has been the case, that they have had a long list on, no matter what I was scanning, this would happen a lot. And in my mind, being a doctor, I'm thinking, okay, we got some investigation to do, that this person's got a lot of things going on and they may not even be aware of it. But I'm not really sure, and I want to have a better understanding if that is what that is. So that's my first question on database.
You want to answer that one? The question as you've posed it, I think would be impossible for anybody to answer at this point in time. But I think your initial assessment is probably pretty close to being right on.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to go online and say, this is it, hands down, because I don't know. But with more experience, more investigation into this, we're going to be able to see if that is a pattern. But it does, your initial assessment of this person is definitely receptive to this type of therapy. Otherwise, he wouldn't be
yes.
coming up with this much information. But what it all means, I don't know. And I don't know if any of us here could know with a certainty.
I would invite anyone else here who's been doing it longer than me privately to come up and
Yeah,
discuss
let's talk
this
about
with
that
me.
after.
Okay,
Second
so
question.
my next question is like no apathy came up as an emotional matrix. And I was perplexed, as was my client, because this is a person that does have apathy, because she's a healer herself. And I didn't know what to say. So I'm wanting to understand some of these things that just don't quite make sense.
Well, in Eileen's case, she didn't have any sarcasm until she started hanging out with me.
Okay, the questions that you've posed are really good questions. I just don't know how to answer those, where I can say it's like this. So it's something we'd have to look at. And you're sure welcome to talk to people that have done more work on it.
Okay, so
I just don't know.
Okay, so leading to the third question, in your very first video live that you did, you said that we would be doing a disservice if we didn't add the database in. Can you please address that again in this group?
Okay. The database is absolutely critical. The question that came up earlier too was, how do you know how far to dig deep, which way you're going to dig, how to go? The database is the only way you can find which direction you want to go. Because in the database, you're going to find out, is it an emotional, is it a disease, is it a physical thing, is it a parasite, is it a bacteria? This helps you figure out what's going on in the body. If you don't do the database, you're just flying blind. You go, you do your scan, you do your optimization, pat them on the button, out the door they go. That's not the way you want to do this. The database gets down to the root, the cause, the nidus of what's going on, and that's where you need to go. We have practitioners that hate using database because it takes so much time. But that's where you find, and really it's only in the first 2 or 3 sessions that you spend with a client that you're having to spend that kind of time. After that, it's you pretty much have got down where you're going, you've got a good game plan to follow. But if you don't do your groundwork, if you don't do that initial stuff, you're going to lose something, you're going to miss something, or you're going to completely send them in the wrong direction. So the database is critical.
Okay, can I share? I need to share this with you then. So I have a niece that has polymyositis, a severe case of it. And her sister consistently has polymyositis show up in her database. She doesn't have it, but to me, in my mind, I'm thinking, and so is she, having lived in the home with that sister, that energy, she's carrying that energy from her sister of that polymyositis.
Okay,
Is this correct?
You are dead on that. I'll give you another example that just happened to us this 2 weeks ago. 1 second, I'm going to go over this. I have a client going through our center right now, and I can share this with you because he gave me permission to do so. He went to Africa for some enlightenment. I don't know. Anyway, he spent 3 weeks there, and he got malaria. Almost died, sick as dog, flies him home. Now, his brother went, but didn't get malaria. Comes back. Now, I want you to listen to this all the way. The one that got malaria spent time in the hospital, went through the medical process, got all that stuff done, comes home. The brother who did not get malaria came home. They both went through the program. When we scanned them, the one that did not get malaria came up with malaria with an 8, and the one that did have contract malaria had no malaria at all. The difference is the one that had the malaria went through the program, the medicine took it out of his system, doesn't have it, but the brother was exposed to it but never contracted it. Does it make sense? That goes along with your sister or your client with the sister. what is it with pregnancy? When the husband gets sick, when the woman gets sick, it's what do you call it? Sympathy pain. We do carry those who we're around, or those that we care with. We do carry a lot of their pain and a lot of their emotional stuff. So in normal medicine, normal science, they would tell me I was absolutely nuts, and that's okay. I'm happy to be in that category. So was a bunch of other good people through history. We don't know, and neither do they. We're all on here to learn, and we're learning through this method. They learned to another method, and unfortunately the two methods don't generally share much time with each other. Okay, any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Mine is more of a comment. Conditions referred to like polymyositis are kind of rare, and they're very serious, they're difficult. And the word came out brother or sister in this case. And I would think there's a genetic predisposition just hearing about your two clients there. I've had the experience where you have a difficult case to diagnose or to treat, and it's giving you a hard time clinically. Oftentimes I just sat down with the person and said, do you have brothers and sisters? Yes. Tell me everything, every single detail about your brother or sister's health history. And by the time you get through that, you've picked up some clues that give you direction on what to look at and what to be checking that you may not have thought about before because it hadn't manifested with that person. But genetically, we resemble our brothers and sisters more than anyone else because we share common genes from each parent. So in your work with people, always keep that in mind, that there's a treasure trove of information out there when you're puzzled or stuck or have a question in your mind. That's a great resource, just to research, or in the case with the scan, have that brother or sister come in and do a scan and see what things correlate, what things coincide with the other person. I think you'll find your level of efficiency and improvement, that person will go way up. I think it'd be very interesting.
Okay, thanks.
Could that sister be cleared somehow so that she doesn't contract this disease?
Okay, so the database, so this is what I'm learning just from not having been told this by Lauren, but just because I've done quite a few people now and seen these patterns with diabetes, with a child that was showing diabetes and the mother was type 1 diabetic, and the baby's showing all these diabetic pancreatic stuff in her database, okay? So what I'm noticing, if I do the database scan about every 3 to 5 times, it changes. And it's going from cause down to symptom and
Nothing.
And then to nothing. So that's where I'm relying on monitoring to see if it's clearing, and they do. Everything eventually, I'm assuming, will clear after they've done enough optimizations, because it does not stay the same. It starts to change.
Okay, that was interesting. You mentioned apathy didn't ever come up. Nothing to do with the system. I was on a bus in Scotland a long time ago. On the back of the bus seat, somebody had written, the problem with Scotland is apathy. And somebody had taken a pen and written on top of it, who cares? So, okay, real quick, yes.
The thing I have found in doing thousands of tests on myself, and then I started doing my husband, he had a lot of the same things. But what I have done is I've done a lot of testing, and I found a number of things that were very, I'm diabetic, and I have had a lot of pancreas and cancer and different things. But as I go through the test, it always came up with certain infections, parasites, and bacterial. And once I got those cleaned up, but I did it with the other unit,
Acoustic light wave?
and I have found that once I got me clear, all the other things cleared up.
Yep.
So when you do the test, if it's more in those parasites, bacterial, once you get that cleared, everything except my eyes, and they even cleared a lot, and it was profound. And when you sleep with someone, then they take on a lot of those same energies. But I could, as I clear myself up, it's very similar in your thought process. When you clear yours, your generations will clear, and it will happen. And as I test them, the same thing happens.
Okay. All right. So I think what we're going to do here is we'll take a 10-minute break, let everybody get some stretch, get some water, go to the restroom. We're going to turn off live now, but we'll be back on in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, guys, here's